June 6, 1944. The shores of Normandy would become the stage for the largest amphibious invasion in history. Brace yourself for the story of D-Day. If you enjoy exploring history like this, don't forget to hit subscribe and join us for more stories. Here's the date, is June 6, 1944. Dawn is about to break over the choppy gray waters of the English Channel. Thousands of young men, crammed into swaying landing craft, stare at the French coastline. They are not just sailing toward a beach, they are sailing toward destiny. For many, it will be their final sunrise. This is the story of D-Day, the day that would decide the fate of the world. By 1944, Europe had been under the shadow of Nazi Germany for 4 long years. The Allies, led by the United States, Great Britain, and the Soviet Union, knew that to liberate the continent, they had to launch a massive seaborne invasion. The question wasn't if, but where and when. The strategy was simple in concept, but monumental in scale. Punch a hole in Hitler's Atlantic Wall, establish a foothold in France, and begin the final push toward Berlin. The stakes were impossibly high. Failure wasn't an option. This colossal undertaking was codenamed Operation Overlord. It was the most complex military operation in history, years in the making. The Supreme Allied Commander, General Dwight D. Eisenhower, shouldered the immense responsibility. But before a single boot touched the sand, a war of deception had to be won. This was Operation Bodyguard, a brilliant campaign of misinformation designed to fool the Germans. The Allies created a phantom army, complete with inflatable tanks and fake radio chatter, to convince Hitler the main invasion would target Pas-de-Calais, the closest point to Britain. They even used a famous double agent, codenamed Garbo, to feed false intelligence to German high command. The deception worked masterfully, keeping crucial German divisions away from Normandy on the fateful day. Fun fact: to keep the plans top secret, the code names for the landing beaches were chosen randomly. Omaha and Utah were named after the home states of 2 American generals involved in the planning. As dawn broke on June 6th, the invasion began. Over 150,000 Allied soldiers prepared to assault 5 key beaches along a 50-mile stretch of the Normandy coast. The Americans landed at Utah and Omaha beaches. The British landed at Gold and Sword, and the Canadians stormed Juno. Each beach was a unique battlefield with its own set of horrors. Utah Beach saw relatively light resistance thanks to pre-dawn bombing and paratrooper support. But at Omaha, it was a different story. It was a death trap. The invasion relied on groundbreaking technology. Higgins boats, flat-bottomed landing craft, were essential for delivering troops and vehicles right onto the shore. Floating duplex-drive Sherman tanks, fitted with canvas screens, were designed to swim to the beaches, though many sank in the rough seas. Above, thousands of paratroopers from the 82nd and 101st Airborne Divisions were dropped behind enemy lines, tasked with sowing chaos and securing key bridges and crossroads. Their mission was perilous. Many were scattered far from their drop zones, landing in flooded fields or directly into enemy positions. The German defenses, part of the vaunted Atlantic Wall, were formidable. Concrete bunkers housing machine guns and artillery dotted the cliffs. The beaches themselves were littered with terrifying obstacles nicknamed Rommel's asparagus, sharp angled steel structures designed to rip open landing craft. Mines were buried in the sand, and the entire coastline was wrapped in barbed wire. At Omaha Beach, the American forces faced the elite German 352nd Infantry Division. The initial waves of soldiers were cut down as soon as the ramps of their Higgins boats dropped. The water turned red as they were pinned down, with nowhere to go but forward into a storm of lead. Amid the chaos, incredible acts of heroism turned the tide. At Point du Hoc, U.S. Army Rangers scaled 100-foot sheer cliffs under intense fire to neutralize a battery of German guns. On Omaha Beach, Brigadier General Norman Cota famously rallied his terrified, pinned-down men, shouting, "Gentlemen, we are being killed on the beaches. Let's go inland and be killed." His leadership inspired the soldiers to break through the defenses. At Sword Beach, a British piper, Bill Millen, marched up and down the shore playing his bagpipes, ignoring the bullets and explosions around him to boost morale, a surreal and inspiring sight in the midst of battle. Fun fact, The BBC ran a crossword puzzle competition in the months leading up to D-Day. MI5 became alarmed when several of the puzzle's answers were top-secret code names for the invasion, including Omaha and Overlord. It turned out to be a complete coincidence, the words chosen by a schoolteacher who had no knowledge of the operation. Another fun fact, the Allies used a simple children's toy, a small metal cricket clicker, as a password system for paratroopers landing in the dark. 1 click was a challenge, 2 clicks in response meant friend. It was a low-tech solution to a high-stakes problem. And one last fun fact for you. To accurately predict the weather, which was crucial for the invasion, the Allies secretly used weather data from a station in Blacksod Bay, Ireland, a neutral country. The forecast from this single remote station played a key role in Eisenhower's decision to launch on June 6th. By the end of the day, the Allies had secured a tenuous foothold. The cost was staggering, with an estimated 10,000 Allied casualties, including over 4,000 confirmed dead. But they had breached the Atlantic Wall. This victory marked the beginning of the end for Nazi Germany. With a secure front in the west, the Allies could pour in millions of soldiers and endless supplies, squeezing the Third Reich between them and the advancing Soviet Union in the east. 11 months later, the war in Europe would be over. But let's pause and consider a chilling thought. What if D-Day had failed? Eisenhower had already written a letter taking full responsibility, prepared in case the invasion was repelled. A failure would have been catastrophic, potentially delaying the end of the war by years and costing millions more lives. The world we know today was truly forged in the fire and blood of those Normandy beaches. The courage displayed on June 6, 1944, reshaped history forever. The victory at Normandy was a monumental step, but the road to Berlin was still long and brutal. The soldiers who survived D-Day had to fight their way through the dense hedgerows of the French countryside, a landscape that turned into a deadly maze. But what was the one secret weapon the Allies had in this next phase of the fight that the Germans completely underestimated? Thank you for watching. If you found this journey into history compelling, please hit that like button, subscribe, and ring the bell so you don't miss our next video.